Hello everyone, this is the great Lord and Master, Oseron, the Eternal. Okay, this should be the third and final part of this Cannabis Adventure series, because I've learned what I've needed to learn. I've understand now. I know what was going on, and I solved a problem that's been bothering me for a long time. Okay. Last night was the end of the third day in my third night with no cannabis in the dream world. Okay, and now I went to bed and had a normal sleep, and then I also had normal dreams. Okay, it was normal dreams, and they were dreams. I recalled them, but they weren't anything wild. They weren't anything out of the ordinary. They weren't super lucid. They weren't anything. They were normal. And I slept normally. Everything was normal. The night before, when I had those super intense, wild dreams, I also had poor sleep. You know what I mean? So that was more of a factor in that than the cannabis. So basically what I was doing, I was making cannabis, I was putting too much importance on cannabis. Cannabis, like I said, cannabis is a woman. Period. I mean, cannabis is a woman. If you want to know how to treat cannabis, treat her like a woman is exactly it. You know what I mean? You don't want to overindulge, but you don't want to be so strict and rigid that you take all the fun out of it. It basically goes, a good analogy is that song by Cyndi Lauper back in the 80s, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. That is women. That song is the quintessential statement for women and cannabis. Cannabis is great, but if you start getting too rigid, if you start getting too uptight about it, you're going to take all the fun out of it. And that was a problem I was having when I was taking days off with cannabis. I was becoming too rigid. I was, getting too rigid with it. And I was taking all the fun right out of it. Because cannabis is supposed to be something fun. You don't want to be so tight and rigid with it that you just constrict it and choke the life out of it, which is what I was doing. But at the same time, you don't want to be so loose with it that you allow her to dominate you. You know what I mean? So if you're a person that uses cannabis, regardless of your gender, you are the masculine party in the interaction. Even if you're a woman, you are the masculine partner in comparison to cannabis, because cannabis is a woman. So it's your responsibility to get your shit together, and you are the one who sets the stage how the interaction is going to go without choking the life out of her, without constricting her, without being domineering to her. So I was putting too much importance on cannabis, but this is good because this taught me a very powerful thing, and this aspect of the dream world and cannabis has been bothering me for a long time, but now I know the answer. Now, I want to get to something. I want to tell you about the dream that I had the other night. I wasn't going to mention this on video because this is horrifying. What happened in the dream is horrifying. I was horrified when it was happening, and I couldn't believe what was going on. And I wasn't going to mention it because people are going to hear what I hear, what went on in the dream, and they're going to be like, "What a fucking." I just want to preface this by saying that I wouldn't do what happens in this dream in real life. I just want to emphasize that point to the highest fucking order, is that I wouldn't do this in real life. The only way I would ever do what I did in real life in this dream is if I was being attacked and my life was in danger. I wouldn't do this to anybody, but especially a woman. But let me explain what happened in the dream the other night. Okay, I was in the dream world, and I was with this woman. Okay, and we were interacting. We were obviously together in some way, as a couple in some way, but things weren't really going very well. I wasn't really happy with her, and things weren't clicking in the right way. even to the, but she was fucking, she was, at least in the dream, she was the domineering partner. She was the woman that was in control. She was the one who fucking had to have her way about everything. And I was just sort of kind of there, and I wasn't liking that, To the point where at one point I even leaned in close to her and we started kissing, but then she started fucking, sticking her tongue down my throat and all that shit, and just really getting aggressive with it. And the kiss wasn't very good either. I wasn't happy. It wasn't good. It was just too wet. It was just not a good kiss at all. Right? So then, at one point in the dream, I realized I had to escape the situation. I was in a situation I didn't like, and I had to escape. Right? It was almost as if I was being held captive. So, I had an idea. I fucking hid behind a door, and I knew she would come looking for me eventually. Right? So I was hiding behind a door, and sure as shit, she came looking. And as soon as she got near me, as soon as she got near the door, I bust out from behind the door, and I just unload on her. I mean, I'm fucking blasting this fucking woman in the face with my fist. I'm beating the shit out of a woman in my dreams. I was even mortified in my dream. I was mortified in my dreams. I was like, what the fuck am I doing, right? And so then after 3 or 4 hits, I stop, and her face is just covered with blood, right? So then I stop, and then I take her into the bathroom so she can clean herself up. And now she's not mad at me, and I'm not really, so I take her to the bathroom, she cleans herself up. And then a friend of mine I know in real life comes into the room, maybe to investigate what's going on or whatever, but then he sees a hand towel on the fucking ground. It's covered in blood, and he hands it to me. I just kind of try to play it off nonchalantly. And he's like, oh, yeah. So then he ends up coming into the bathroom where she is, and I'm there, and then he sees what's going on, and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, what the fuck's going on? And that even reached a point where, he was, and then of course, naturally, he got pissed off. He's like, what the fuck did you just do to this fucking girl? Right? And so then it even reached a point where me and this other dude almost went at it. We were in the pre-fight stage, going on here. And then, that sort of cleared up in the dream phase into something else. And me and the girl who just had this horrible interaction, and again, I got to emphasize, I would never do this in real life. We even continued to interact together in different phases of the dream. The dream phased into different parts, and I was still with this girl. We were still together, doing things together, and all this. And then, of course, I woke up, and then there were other parts to the dream that happened. So I wake up after this, and I'm like, what the fuck? I can't believe I just did that. This is horrifying. But now I understand what the fuck was going on. Now I understand what the dream meant. I was blaming cannabis for something that cannabis had nothing to fucking do with. It's not cannabis's fault that, if you're having problems with dreaming, that's not the cannabis's fault. It's your fault for not using cannabis properly, or using too much cannabis to where it affects your dreams. And on top of that, the cannabis isn't even playing that much of a role in the dream aspect anyway. You're still going to have powerful dreams. You're still going to dream if you need to dream. Cannabis doesn't really affect it that much. I was putting way too much importance on the cannabis and the dream world. I mean, yes, will cannabis affect dreams? Yes, but that's not to the depth and gravity that I was making it seem. I was making it seem like cannabis had this power that it really doesn't have. So, so that's kind of where that goes. So, but this has been powerful these past, because this is the 4th day now, and I feel fine. I feel fine now. I fucking don't feel anything. There's no withdrawal from the cannabis or nothing like that. But it shows me that cannabis is a great cannabis. My last video I called Cannabis Friend or Foe. Well, cannabis is whatever you fucking make it. Cannabis, again, is just like a woman. So a woman can either be the greatest thing that ever happened to a man in his life, or it can be the worst, or she can be the worst fucking nightmare that ever happened to a man. It's all dependent on you and how you choose to interact with her. But with that being said, it's still important to take time off, and that is a must, and one day a week isn't enough. But also, conversely, taking a whole moon cycle or even a whole week off might be too much. I think my original formula is one of the probably best models that you could probably use, and that was simply this. In every week, the way I used to do it was I would take 2 days off. Here's my basic formula. I would take Monday and Tuesday off. I would get high once on Wednesday, and then I would take Thursday again off, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I would be free to smoke cannabis all I want. And that formula was probably one of the best formulas I had, because I was still having powerful dreams. I was still and I was enjoying the cannabis. The only way I would probably change that is maybe I would do something like that every other week instead of every week. You know what I mean? So every other week, take 3 days off in the week, and that might even be enough. Instead of, once a month taking a whole week off, that might be too much. That might be, But I think any of those plans would be good plans. I think if you wanted to take, 3 days off in a week, I think that would be fine, but I think it would also be just as fine if you wanted to do that every other week. Like for instance, maybe like 1 week, take 1 day off, okay? And then the next week you take the 3 days off, and then the week after that just take 1 day off, then alternate like that. Or if you wanted to take a week off once a month, I think that would be fine too. But I think what you don't want to do is, but if you only take 1 day a week off every week, I think that's too little. And I think so I think you have to have this period of where you're at least taking 2 days off in a row to sort of cleanse out a little bit, or maybe even 3. So, one other way could be take 3 days off in a row every other week. I think that might be also a fine way to use cannabis. But the point being is you have to take some time off. You have to be disciplined. Again, it comes to the scenario of if you're with a hot girl and you have sex with her every day, it's going to take away from the sexual experience. One thing I want to add real quickly. In the other video, I mentioned something about in the sexual sessions I have. I mentioned it being a little bit harder to ride the waves and avoid the ejaculation. Well, another part of the equation to that isn't just the increased sensation, because I don't really know if that's the case or not. What it could have been is the tension, because someone made a comment. He was amazed that I could go 200 days without ejaculating. Well, I've also been working at this a long fucking time. You know what I mean? So I've learned how to do that. But the thing about ejaculation is your body will tense up to make you ejaculate. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things you got to overcome is tension. You got to learn how to overcome the tension in your body, because tension makes you ejaculate. But not using cannabis for those 2 days would naturally have an effect on your body's tension level, because you're not doing something that you're used to doing, so there's going to be an element of tension at play. So that's a part of it too, because I all the time I engage in sexuality when I'm not high, because I try to make a point of doing that, because I don't like to use cannabis as a crutch, and I don't want to have to be stoned to engage in sexuality. So even when I was only taking 1 day a week off, I would still make an effort to engage in sexuality on that off day, just because I don't want to have to use cannabis to do certain things, because that's taking cannabis and using her as a crutch. That's the same thing as saying I need to have a girlfriend or my life doesn't mean anything. That's the same exact thing as that. It's like, if I don't have a girlfriend, my life isn't worth shit. You're putting too much importance on her And it's the same thing with cannabis. And it's the same thing with cannabis in this dream problem I was having. I was putting all the problem on. I was blaming cannabis for something cannabis has nothing to do with. You know. So this should be it for this brief little mini series of cannabis. I just had to make this video because, you know, I couldn't leave it the way it was, up in the air the way it was, because I was still basically putting the blame on cannabis, and cannabis is sitting here like, what the fuck did I do? I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? It's my problem, or your problem, or who, you know what I mean? But the problem is you, not cannabis. It's up to, again, you are the masculine party in the use of cannabis, and it's your responsibility to have self-discipline and control and master the situation, not cannabis. So that should be it. Thank you for watching, and namaste.